Hello! Welcome to the second episode of Exploring Ethics Across Medicine. Today, your hosts are me, Annika Mazika. I'm a fourth year student at Arizona State University, majoring in biochemistry and minoring in nonprofit leadership and management, with the hopes of one day becoming either a pediatrician or some kind of PCP. And today, our special guest is...
Hi, I'm Emily Hawkinson. I'm a recent graduate from Arizona State University with my degree in psychology, and I'm currently a psychometrist.
We love it. We'll go more into Emily's background as we go into the discussion, but today she's going to be serving as our psychology liaison as we explore the topic of weird psychology samples. So imagine you're scrolling the web and trying to find the most up-to-date research results available for whatever question you have, from how healthy is this, to how effective is this procedure, to how does this affect the way I think. You see the results and you start applying it outright without taking notice of the weird population. What is weird and how does it affect effective and ethical research? Let's jump into it. Today we'll be exploring this ethical dilemma by evaluating the article created by Arithi Puthilam at Monk Prayogashala Research Institution titled Psychology's Weird Problem. As a side note, I apologize if I mispronounce anything. In the article, it states that since 2010, psychologists have started to realize that different populations may not be completely representative of all humans, particularly North American college students, as well as the weird category, otherwise known as Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies. It found that in the top APA articles, 68% of the sample populations were drawn from the United States, and furthermore, 96% were drawn from weird countries altogether. This can pose a serious issue when it comes to the results and understanding that it may not be representative of all humans across the world, especially when it comes to important topics such as evolutionary and cross-cultural psychology. The article explores the reasons why this can occur, such as behavioral researchers are from weird countries themselves, and gather participants based on location or institution. Possible solutions that Puthilam discussed are already being put into motion by the Psychological Science Accelerator, the Society for the Improvement of Psychological Science, and the Institute for Globally Distributed Open Research and Education, who are all developing systems to collaborate with researchers throughout the world. So, what is the most efficient and ethical way to conduct research for psychology, with special regards to the population choice? Let's explore. But before we begin our discussion, the word of the episode, and actually it's words of the episode brought to you via Morrison and Furlong's book, Healthcare Ethics, Critical Issues for the 21st Century, 4th edition, is beneficence and non-maleficence. So non-maleficence and beneficence tend to be defined together through the Hippocratic saying of, first, do no harm, benefit only, with non-maleficence relating to avoiding harms and risks in ethical scenarios, and beneficence relating to providing as much benefits to potential stakeholders as possible. So, from that article, Emily, what do you think about this topic?
Yeah, so I've heard about this topic a lot during my undergraduate career, and it has been a problem that's been talked about since 2010, like the article said, but it's still a major problem today, like you said, given how many current publications have a large concentration of weird participants. But this can have some ethical repercussions on treatment because some treatments that are researched could be proven by the studies to be effective and then used in common practices. And if the studies had mostly weird participants, populations that weren't included could possibly be harmed by these treatments if they are not researched in those populations before. Not all treatments work for everybody, and that's been seen in many cases, but if researchers don't take the time to look at how treatments, including medications, work in a representative population, then harm could occur.
I definitely agree with you, and honestly, I'm loving the throwbacks to the words of the day. It really It really is. Is this to the benefit of, it may not just be directly patients in this case, but this is to the benefit of everyone. Like, I mean, if you're going to be looking at a research article and taking the results outright, which maybe you shouldn't do, but in general, like, you kind of expect this to be like, okay, like, this is very well thought out, this is well planned, the research sample was, like, chosen to be representative as much as it could be for whatever we're researching, and this is what it means, and I can apply this now. And, you know, as you said, like, if they're weird, if there's like a really limitation on like what the population is, it can pose risks for like when you implement stuff like that. Because it's different depending on, you know, like maybe your age, your gender, your socioeconomic status. It's really important to look at each of these populations as we research everything.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you go.
There's so many external factors, like you said, that affect results. So in order to maintain validity, researchers need to be more proactive in selecting their sample and also be more upfront in their publications on possible limitations so that when people read them, they don't take everything for face value. They're able to think about what could have limited the results, and then future researchers can build off of what they've done with more populations.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, even like if we look at clinically of like different situations, like you'll see in every episode this guys, I'm telling you, like information is everything. The more information you give, the better. So on the researchers, it really is important for not only like when they're creating the research question and like how we're going to be gathering the data, but to presenting it, like what is our population and how that might have affected the results, and what might be but like you said, what might need to be addressed in future experiments. So have you seen any of these kind of like weird problem, and maybe like the work you do or the research you've done, anything like that?
Yeah. In my research, I noticed a lot of the populations in Alzheimer's patients. I had to limit it down to just patients who live in nursing homes because that was the majority of the population. And also they were weird participants most of the time as well. So in order to do an effective meta-analysis, sometimes you can't include all of the articles out there, but there was like not even any sort of articles with Alzheimer's patients in anything other than like nursing homes and weird populations. So like that really limits the ability for people to do things like meta-analyses, which can provide good data by combining a bunch of different publications together. But if the publications aren't diverse, then like you're not going to get a better conclusion from them. So that is a frustrating thing in this field.
That is. Do you happen to notice a lot that like many articles are for like really interesting cases, like they just don't have enough research about them, and then subsequently, like when they do have research, the population is kind of limited?
Yeah, there's sometimes I noticed there were some like specific medications I was looking into, and some good articles that was looking at what I was looking at. They just had a very small population, and it was not representative at all. So, and they would note it in their limitations, which is good to be transparent, but it makes it very difficult to come to a real conclusion.
Yeah, and like you said, once it gets applied, is that beneficial to everybody?
Right, yeah, it's not, you need a big sample and it needs to be representative for it to be information that can be practically used and applied in the real world.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I'm currently working on my thesis, and you know, going through the IRB, you have to go through a couple trainings, and that was a big point of it was, you know, who are we including, and how are you including them? Like, is it done out of convenience, or is it done for thorough things? So, like, you know, for example, like, am I for like kind of that situation in the article it talked about was like a lot of behavioral researchers come from weird countries themselves and use their institutions. So is it out of convenience that like this problem is arising? But on that note, I also want to pose like, do you think it's okay maybe to even like to limit these populations per research as long as you're being upfront about it? So like if I'm going to be targeting weird, this is my population, but subsequent should be focused on very specific populations, but at least diversely, like like not just in Arizona, but like all over the place, like this specific population. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I remember talking about in classes, like about research, how maybe if you have like a foundational idea that you want to like get started, taking a convenient sample might help you get preliminary data that you can then use to promote like a larger study. So in that case, that could be a good convenience tool to get an idea up and running. But eventually, you do need to diversify your population and have even like larger sample. So getting like in having the internal validity and just doing a small test starter is a good idea, but then you've got to make sure you have external validity. So whatever conclusion you come to can be applied to all populations.
I totally agree. And I notice you keep bringing up the word validity. Do you want to go ahead and, define it for our listeners?
Yeah, so validity, so in like I was saying internal and external. So internal validity is just how like reliable and consistent are your results within your study, within your participants. And then external validity is
Oops. Sorry, it looks like she cut out, folks. We'll get her back on in a second.
right. Sorry about that. As I was saying, external validity is relating to how well results can be applied to practical uses like therapy or just treatment in general, or just our knowledge of how humans are humans. So it's important to have both. So the internal validity can help you know how well your experiment was, like with all the procedures, and then external validity I think is important ethically because it makes sure that you aren't causing harm to anybody, because people are different and you need to make sure that you are acknowledging how different factors can influence people.
Well, thank you for that very thorough definition. That definitely helps. So really like, increasing, you know, making the population more diverse is really help that validity, like you said, and subsequently like the effectiveness of the research as a whole, which um, the way it'll be applied like clinically or in other situations, like it's going to be important, like because I mean I think about it ethically, like I know the AMA, the American Medical Association, they talk about how for physicians, it's really important that if you're using new things, you have to make sure that research is like very like well thought out. It's like, it's valid, like you said. So how are we going to make it for those people that they can be able to apply it? That's going to be really important.
Yeah, because like therapists in the field, they aren't the ones always doing the research. They're the ones reading the research and trying to pick which practices to implement into their practice. So researchers have to hold up their end of the deal and make sure that their research is valid and applicable to any patient that might walk through a therapist's door.
Amen. Oh, man. Well, another thing I kind of want to add on to all of that is like, when we talk about medical care and like the ethics of that, everything should be patient centered. So when we're talking about research, like in the same way, it should be patient centered, whether the patients are like the people being researched on, or like who is it going to be applied to, and who's going to be getting whatever treatments or the data in the end. So it's important at every step that we keep that in mind. So, like, the population, that's a big thing. Like, how are we making it effective for them that the results given are, like, accurate? And then, like, other things about research it's important to know is, like, the autonomy, like, are they well informed of the choice? And then subsequently after, and like we've talked about this earlier in the episode, is are they informed that the, like, results might be limited? So, it's the patient care is still applicable to the research, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, the ultimate goal of research should be to improve the lives of patients, like, even though it's indirect. So all of those are very important factors to keep in mind, rather than, like, personal goals of the researcher. Like, their goal should be to help others as much as they can, just like a therapist.
I agree. Any other final thoughts on this subject, whether from your personal experience or just in general?
Yeah, I'm glad this is a topic that's still talked about a lot in school, and I hope that people, like in my class, graduating and going into psychology, keep this in mind as they become researchers, because it's very important, and we're not going to make progress in the field of psychology unless we do research that is valid and applicable to everybody, no matter what experiences they've had in life.
I totally agree. I mean, keeping the students, like, on top of, like, like I said, the effectiveness, the ethicalness of everything, like, it's important to, like, how our future is going to be shaped by what they do and what they research, what kind of care they give. It's very important. But then subsequently, the people doing the research need to know, but the people learning about the research should know. So keeping people well aware of the limitations of what they did. And then the people afterwards need to be, like, ethically applying it. Like I said, with the AMA, like, is this, like, accurate, well-researched topic,
Yeah.
So, well, I'm excited to see our futures. You'll be researching, we'll be applying. But, yeah, well, thank you for joining us today for this episode. I had so much fun. The other ones we kind of talk more about care, so really going into the research part is, like you said, it's so important because, like, where are we getting this information from in the first place?
Yeah, I like the connection with research and therapy and other types of practice, like your field. So yeah, it's a really important topic, and I'm glad we're talking about it.
I love it. Well, you got the big brain, you got the specialty for the big brain, and I can't wait to see where we go. But thank you for joining us for today's episode. For anyone listening, if you want to look more into, like, what we talked about today, the article and will be cited in the description with the link. And feel free to join us in the discussion and comment what your thoughts on this subject. But for that'll be the end of the second episode. So thank you, Emily. Thank you, any listeners. And bye.